We're going to do Hans Gruber from Die Hard. It's Halloween, so it'll be a little scary, I guess. Joe, it's Halloween. Be of good spirits, and let me ask you, what is the scariest aspect of test automation? Is it me? Is it that people think that it's just writing test scripts, not full-blown software development? Or that they think it will find bugs when in fact it just returns information whose meaning is determined by us humans? Now, Joe, I would love to talk test automation all day, but work must intrude. By the time they figure out Test Talks is now the Test Guild, you and I will be working remotely, drinking Dasani, and automating that last 20% of the application. So show us the code.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Drop that.
Welcome to the Test Guild Automation Podcast. We're all getting together to learn more about software testing and automation with your host, Joe Colantonio.
Hey, it's Joe, and welcome to another episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Today we'll be talking with Paul Grossman, the dark arts wizard, all about his magic object model, natural language processing, test project, and much, much more. Paul has been delivering hybrid automation testing framework solutions for nearly 2 decades in all kinds of technologies, and he's spoken at pretty much all the major conferences as well. And if you follow him for any length of time, you know he loves to freely share his real-world technical experience awesomeness. So it's great to have him back on the show. So get ready to discover a unique approach to dynamically identify objects in your application for your automated test. The Test Guild Automation Podcast is sponsored by the fantastic folks at Sauce Labs. Their cloud-based test platform helps ensure your favorite mobile apps and websites work flawlessly on every browser, operating system, and device. Get a free trial. Visit testguild.com/Sauce Labs and click on the exclusive sponsor section to try it for free for 14 days. Check it out. Hey, Paul, welcome back to the Guild.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be back here speaking with you today.
Awesome. So, Paul, before we get into it, for the folks that don't know, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I'm a software developer engineer in test. I've been doing that for about 19 years, and I speak at a bunch of different conferences. When I'm not doing that, I'm working on creating creative solutions for automation in a variety of different tools. And I like to go out there and have a lot of fun. That's basically that's my thing. Just make sure we're all enjoying our jobs and having a fun time at it while we're doing what we're doing.
Paul, one thing I've been noticing lately on some of you also produce a lot of content, and I've been noticing on your YouTube channel, you've been talking more about Test Project. Is this a newer tool that you've been starting to use, or is this just something you're experimenting with?
Yeah, so they reached out to me about 2 years ago. Karen Tabul reached out and was talking to me about maybe adding some interesting components to Test Project. And I know you just recently had an interview with Mark Kardashev from Test Project. So Karen and Mark were asking me if I could do some sort of add-in for them. They've been really kind of pushing me to play around a little bit with it. And I heard your podcast with Mark, and I thought, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. And we'll get to that in a little while. I thought maybe let me tell you a little bit about what's been going on since the last time you and I talked.
Cool.
Well, first of all, that little opening bumper out there, I can't take credit for writing that material. I actually kind of cheated. I ran a contest up on Twitter for everyone to kind of give a response of what's the most sinister part of automation. And we had a couple winners out there. Jenny Bramble, and she goes by Jenny Does Things. And Andrew Knight was an automation pandy, and I think it's a panda idea, throughout the top winning ideas for what's most evil. And Chris Trimper, he was the one who said he is the most sinister thing in test automation. I got to give a shout out to him out there. So for the last 2 years, I've been working on some cool automation processes, and I've gotten some references out there. I got to thank Mike Clark out there with Automation Journey. He actually mentioned me in one of the articles that you've got posted up there. I hit number 24 on the 43 test automation engineers to follow in 2018. So, and I think that was your post. So again, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate that. And you also mentioned our Facebook group, which currently now is up to 7,000 members. That's the Advanced Test Automation group on Facebook. So anybody who's an automation engineer, please come on, join on down, and ask any questions about anything that you've been working on, or anything that any questions got on any tools. We're more than happy to help out and throw out ideas. The last time we talked a little bit about decomposing a business case for a fictional website utility called Candy Mapper. And today, Candy Mapper actually exists, but it's not a real product. I think I mentioned that the first time. It's basically ways for trick-or-treaters so they can find the best candy and skip the houses with, they're giving out, non-candy, apples and stuff like that. That's not a real product, but the website actually exists. It's candymapper.com. And it actually has now a staging site called Candy Mapper R2 and a dev site called Candy Mapper R3. So if you ever want to try your automation script against it, you can write it and then try and see if it works against the newer releases of a fictional web application. And that's usually what I use for testing in my, if you take a look at my videos on YouTube, you'll see that it pops up using that site quite a bit. It's a cool little sandbox, I'd say. It's and as far as sandboxes go, it's not something that is designed to be. It'll always work every time. It actually has a few bugs embedded into it intentionally that automation engineers like you and myself will come across, and you can test to see if your skills are up to being able to get those things to work. A couple other things I've been doing is I think I don't have as much experience in programming languages as I really need to. As you know, I've been working in UFT, and that's VB script for quite a while. And they kind of pick on me like, hey, this guy's been working on BASIC. Yeah, he's been making the mortgage payment for 14 years working in BASIC. But the last 2 years I'm working in Java. But I found something kind of cool, and it's basically a website that helps you learn how to program in 22 other languages. I'm not sure if you heard of that. Have you heard of Code in Game?
I've heard about it for a long time ago, but then I saw a link from you about it, and I looked at it recently, and it looks pretty cool. I haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, I got a little hooked into it. So it has 22 languages, including, it's got BASIC in there and everything up to like Object-C. And one of the cool things it does is that it gives you a IDE, so you can write your code, and you start out very simple. You're just writing code to do a print statement. You're essentially doing a system out with some variables of numbers, and then it takes those numbers and throws them into a land speeder game. And if you can get the numbers right, you can beat the land speeders around hitting different markers around it. So it's a cool concept, and in order to learn different concepts in programming, and if you need to if you already know VB script and you need to know Java or JavaScript or something like that, I kind of recommend that. And I'll throw you the link so it appears at the you can add it to the podcast description at the end of the session here.
Cool. So, Paul, why are you doing that? Have you been going on interviews and you're noticing that they're looking for someone with certain programming languages under the belt?
Python, C#, and Java and JavaScript are the main ones they're looking for. And in fact, today somebody asked me, they said, do you have any C# experience? And I said, not practical experience, but I've been taking some Udemy courses on that. And I can tell you that it looks to me like if you're working in C# and you know Java, C# is basically Java, except you can pass your parameters by reference. So, but since you mentioned we got on the topic of C#, some of the things I've also been doing is I've been trying to get out to conferences. And I got out to a really cool conference just recently. I got out to the QAI conference, and I have to thank Moshe Melman over at Apple Tools for getting me in over there. He is a great guy. And the reason I mention this is because one of my former coworkers, her name is Mary Jo Zervis. She and I used to work over at Redbox, and she's now actually working over at Paylocity. And she had her first presentation over at QAI. And I'm going to have to recommend you got to reach out to Mary Jo and talk to her a little bit, because she did a fantastic presentation on SpecFlow in C#. And you know what SpecFlow is, right, Joe?
Yeah, it's a BDD framework, like I think it's a C#.NET implementation of Cucumber.
You got it, exactly. I didn't know that until I sat down and watched Mary Jo's presentation, and then it occurred to me, I'm like, okay, I've worked Cucumber, I've worked the given, when, then, all that stuff in Gherkin, and she was doing the exact same thing, except she has just put it on steroids. So I want to give a shout out to her and let you know that she's probably a good person to speak to upcoming.
So is SpecFlow, is this another requirement? I thought BDD, it used to be really popular. Now I haven't seen as much, but have you been seeing more and more folks using BDD or asking for SpecFlow?
For me, no, but they are in general asking more for Cucumber. And that actually kind of makes sense. And it depends on which type of client you're really working for. In some cases, they say, we want you to automate everything and create the framework whatever way you want. It's up to you. I don't want to ever see the code, stuff like that. So in that case, you can build a basic, a framework whatever way you want, and you're making, let's say, putting in annotations for test and building your framework directly in the code. But in other cases, often someone will come up to me and say, I need this to be so simple that anyone can build a test case. But they never want to see the code. And in that case, you're building up like a Cucumber framework, which is great, because it's basically using given, when, and then you're writing plain English out there to automate your scripts. And if your users are non-technical, they can write plain English scripts in that, and then you can go down to the, me and someone like you would be at the glue code level or the page object model level, and interpreting the plain English and the parameters into executable code that runs against the application. So definitely Cucumber and Gherkin is something that's being asked for quite a bit more in our field.
Cool. So also, Paul, in our pre-show notes, you mentioned something about class switching.
Yeah, so let's get into the horror story of class switching. Actually, it's the hero of the story. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened about a couple of years ago with a client. We had a collection of test cases that were basically, it was an inherited framework. It was about 4 years old. It was 2 years before I had actually joined onto the project. And the application that it was working with really had no changes or maintenance. So when we ran the scripts every once a quarter, we got all green passes. Occasionally we found a defect here or there. But within 2 hours, we could give results to the client, and they're extremely happy about that. And that chugged along really well up until they decided they wanted to put in AngularJS as replacement in the architecture of the application. And Joe, what do you think happened to all our 100 test cases once they did that?
They burned like a jack-o'-lantern.
You are right. We had 99 failures and only one test case passed, and I bet you can guess that. It was the login. Login worked perfectly fine, but everything else was just wasn't working. And what we found out was that there were about 50 plus elements or objects that had changed in the object repository. Now that was QTP we were using, or now it's called UFT. And by the way, it's not that there was any problem with that tool. This can actually happen with anyone. If a parameter, a property of an element changes, that's no big deal. You can go and fix the property, put some regex in it, whatever it is, and that's a very easy fix. But if your element happens to change, class, let's say a link becomes a web button, then you have to go and add the new element and change every code reference there is. So what we figured out is that there would be about 50 elements that would have to change from link to web button. And because this was an early project, there was a lot of copy paste going on. So there was at least 4 code references for every element that we would have to change. And we estimated it would be about, with the two of us, about 16 hours worth of maintenance, 2 days at least, in order to get everything back up and running. And that's kind of hard to tell your client that, who's used to getting their results in 2 hours, that it's going to be about 2 days before you see anything. So what I looked at, I thought, I've been working with this idea called class switching for about 11 years. I've been talking about it. And I told my buddy, I said, I tell you what, let me work with the framework and see if we can introduce class switching in it and see if we can get these things up and running. And basically what class switching is, it's I've described it before, actually, on your show and actually at the Test Guild, is we override the click method. And the click method basically says, okay, whatever element you just gave me, before I try to click it and it doesn't exist, I look to see if it exists. And if it doesn't, then I go and build a dynamic, programmatic description of the element in a different class. So this was passed to me as a link. I'll create a programmatic description of the same item, like add to cart, as a web button instead of a link, and see if I can find that. And if I do, great, I'll click on it. And I'll also report back in the results saying, hey, by the way, I did some class switching. So that took a little extra time, had to give a little overhead, and let's make sure that we adjust it in the future. The upshot of this is that after about an hour and a half, I had it implemented, debugged, and we had 97 of our test cases back up and running and giving results. And now you're probably going to ask me, what about those last 3 test cases, right?
Yeah, so what about those last 3 test cases?
Okay. So one of them was an object that this little trick just did not work with. So we did have to do a little bit of maintenance with the repository, but it was only one element and 4 code locations references. So that was about 5 minutes worth of work to take care of there. And then the last 2 test cases that were failing actually found a defect, which was pretty much standard for our previous test case runs in the prior quarters. So the upshot of this is that we were able to get our entire test suite back up and running in about 90 minutes. It was about a 2-hour delay to the client. They were happy that they understood that there might be some changes with that implementation of AngularJS, but they were quite surprised it was only a 2-hour delay. They were happy with that. And the other thing is that we kind of invented a new term. I don't know if you've heard of this, but I'm claiming it right now. Right shifting. Everybody talks about left shifting, bringing the testing in earlier with the agile. We right shifted our maintenance, and so the test cases had a little bit overhead. They ran a little bit slower, not terribly bad, but I still didn't like it. I wanted to get that fixed. But we were able to take those 16 hours of maintenance and right shift them into the next quarter. So we had 90 days to go and add those new elements, fix all those code references, and because we were reporting out as to which elements got switched, it was not a guessing game as to what may or may not have switched from a link to a web button. And that helped us out quite a bit. So that's our class switching, our little horror story. Class switching was the hero of it. It was great. And now we get into a little bit about the magic object model.
Right. So I guess the magic object model is the next step in the evolution of your class switching.
Yeah. So I sat there and I thought 2 things. One was, can we identify any element or most any element by a programmatic description? Because we were saying this was a link, and can we find it as a web button? And I thought, well, maybe we could have a description that says, I'm looking for a web button that has add to cart in the text. If you can't find it, class switch to a link, or other ways. And I started thinking, is there a way that we can do, we can identify elements just from a basic description? And as it turns out, it's actually fairly easy to do. The reliability, I know everyone is going to listen to this podcast, and I've already been asked about this. What's the reliability on it? And I say it's about as good as other things you've got out there, other approaches. I mean, we do have the page object model, and I'm not trying to say this replaces the page object model, but I would say it definitely could. It could complement it and keep your maintenance even lower by having the objects being smart enough to say, let's see if we can find this in some other way in order to find our elements and report it out. And it turns out, I mean, I was able to do some translation of plain English. Yeah, so I was wondering how many other elements can we identify with plain English? So the first thing is we needed to do some normalization, and that is, let's say, if you say I'm looking for a link, well, a link is actually an anchor, right, in the HTML. So I'd go say, okay, let's see if I can find an element starting with A as our anchor, and has the description of whatever text we've got inside of it. And we pull back a collection. And we do that very similar in UFT, where we get a collection of elements. And I found we could do the exact same thing in Selenium, which is my second question. Can I do this in other languages and other frameworks? And as it turns out, yeah, we can. So what I ended up doing was basically just I was able to figure this out as, you can find lists, you can find buttons, links, edit fields, text. It worked out really, really well. And then I went another step further and I asked another question, which was, well, if I can do this magic object model with a description of, what the class and the object is, can I go one level further and go up to natural language processing and just have a sentence that could be interpreted into our code and dynamically find our elements through a sentence? And again, looks like the answer turned out to be yes. So let me describe how that process came out to be. I was able to kind of divide that up into, you need 5 different elements in order to do this. So the first thing was you need a verb, and you need an element name, an element class. We already had that from the magic object model, and a value and a verification to perform. So let's talk about our verb. A verb could be launch, verify, or click, or select, or enter, or even type. And that actually would even give us a clue. Even if we didn't have an object class, we could guess that if we're going to click on something, well, that object class, it's probably not going to be a list. It's probably going to be it's going to be a link or a web button. Or if it's enter, it's definitely going to be an edit field. And then the second thing we would need is the description of what it is we're looking for. So we're going to click on the add to cart button. We have that text, add to cart, in there. The third thing we would need would be the class. And as I just described, that could even be optional. We could actually deduce what we needed from what the class was from the verb. The fourth thing would be some data. And that would pretty much only be available for enter or verify. So if we want to enter some text into the first name field, we translate field into our input. First name is the string that we're looking for that element. Enter is going to tell us we're going to type something in and probably clear the field before we do that. And then first name Paul would be the text that we're adding in there. So that's 4 different elements. So let's see, we're keeping track of all this. So the fifth one was a validation. So instead of entering or interacting or navigating through our application, the last thing we have to do is our validation, right? So our validation is the keyword, the verb verify or validate. I mean, you could build this any way you want. I try to make it fairly simple or fairly flexible for users to use. So if we did verify, the first name field contains Paul, that's your 5 elements right there. And your validation could be contains, or is exactly, or is greater than, less than, whatever that would happen to be. And you could basically write a natural language, a natural plain English command to go and interact with your application. So I got that far. This is what happens, Joe, when I have nothing to do and all day to do it. We'll talk a little bit about that maybe at the end. So so we have all those all these elements together, and that last one, that validation, greater than, less than, contains, and that's the 5th element. Another movie reference containing him, Officer John McClane of the New York Police Department. It's Bruce Willis, Hans. It's Bruce Willis. He's got another movie coming out, Anyway, back to the story here. So the next thing I thought was maybe I can share this with the community out there at Test Project. And it actually worked out really well because I had some availability, some free time. And I thought, I need to work more on my Java skills. I've already got code in game. I'm playing with that. And I thought, what I need to do is see if I can invent a little IT project for myself. And that's essentially what I did. So you talked with Mark about Test Project, and he gave some great descriptions of what he's got out there. And he basically, you guys talked a little bit about the community add-ons that is being supported by Test Project. And they reached out to me and said, do you think you could maybe do an add-on? I'm like, I'd like to learn my Java skills better. And I created this add-on. It's called the Natural Language Processing Magic Object Model, or NLS MOM, M-O-M. And I always joke about, mom is forgiving, mom understands you, mom gets you. But mom won't clean your room. That's the one thing it won't do. And I created this add-on for these guys. And it's the add-on of the week as of this recording right now. And if you go out there, you can actually play around with it. You can go and create a test and tell it, okay, I want to use the NLS MOM add-on. And then just type in, what do you want to do? I want to launch Candy Mapper. I want to click on I want to click on the send button. I want to enter Paul into the first name field. I want to enter an email, enter somebody's email into the email field. And for the most part, it recognizes it, identifies it, and it's kind of cool. I've actually run it against 7 different websites out there. And it identifies objects as it goes along. One of the things it does is that you can say verify that you see a particular type of image. So you can say verify hoodie image exists or does not exist. And it will not only find an image that has the word hoodie inside of the description, if it finds multiple images, it'll select the first one by the default and say, okay, this is the one that I'm going to use. However, it'll also highlight whatever other ones that are out there that were close matches and say, okay, and highlights them in yellow, saying, okay, these guys, this may be what you were looking for. So make sure if you're passing in text to make it a little bit more descriptive so we know exactly which element we're looking for. And usually even that is resolved because that sort of information that we're pulling from, we're usually pulling that from a database that will give you a full string to describe what kind of element we're looking for. And then your front-end interface, your e-commerce interface might be showing you 50 different elements, but it'll only find one, small size hoodie that you can go and bring onto the screen and click on. So these are all just a bunch of cool things that have been going on while I've been I rolled off a project about 4 weeks ago. It's probably 6 weeks since when you're hearing this, or more once you hear this broadcast. So I've been working on that and having a little bit of fun with that. And one of the cool things I learned playing around with Test Project is that they have a lot more stuff going on with that application. I know you talked with Mark, and he mentioned about how easy it is, and I know you installed a Test Project on your laptop, right? And it was pretty darn easy. That's one of the things I loved about it was that you download that little add-in, the agent, and you execute it, and then you don't have to go through any of the stuff like I'm going to have to add this to my path and check my system variables. Yeah, it just uploads it right to one little folder where it's got Appium and Selenium in there, and then everything else is just kind of handled in the web and then interacts. It's so easy peasy.
How hard was it to actually do that, since you actually went through the whole process?
Yeah, cool. Great question. It wasn't hard all that much. I contacted them and said, okay, first of all, I understand I'm kind of a newbie at Java. I've been working in it for 2 years. I understand the object model and the object-oriented programming, all that stuff. But I need to understand, how am I going to interact with this and use it? And they basically just gave me a skeleton. They said, here's the skeleton. Here's where you put in different elements. Add your classes as you need. There are two different types of add-ins that you can actually create. There's an element add-in, and then there's an action element. And depending on which way you go, and in fact, in mine, it's actually an action element because it's dynamically creating the elements that it needs to interact with. It was really easy. I think it took me about 2 days to build the internals and then start getting it to report back. And I've worked on it probably a total of 2 weeks total, and just adding new features, finding out elements that I need to identify. One of the things I do is, we all of us never write perfect code. And the last thing I put in there was I needed to make sure that if it did throw an error, that it actually responded and put that out into output. Generally, our output is just reporting out that it said, "Yeah, I found your element. I highlighted it. I clicked on it, or whatever that is." But I also wanted it to output, how it described the element, and if it did throw an error, that I found some place that I wasn't doing the correct error catching, that it would spit back that information at me into my output results. And it was actually extremely easy to put that together. It wasn't difficult at all. I'm kind of limited just by my imagination as to what it is that I want to make this little add-on do. And of course, they do have over 100 add-ons out there. They have rest testing add-ons. They have image validation. It's really a cool tool out there that works with. I think one of the other aspects of that is, you mentioned it on that other podcast, is that it actually has its own ability to, you can set it up to work very similar to Jenkins. You can tell it to put it into a jobs, test cases in jobs, and let it execute and run. It'll execute and run automatically, just like Jenkins does. In fact, I think the setup's even a little easier than Jenkins. You just throw it into a jobs description and tell it, do I want to run it daily? Do I want to run it at a certain hour? And the output of that is fantastic because it does do screen captures. If it throws an error, it'll take a screen capture of what you got. That is also flexible. You can turn that off in some cases. You don't necessarily need a screen capture. If you're trying to do some sort of calculation, you just need to have the calculation being output, so you can actually individually turn that on or off. But the upside is it also gives you a lot of cool graphs and reports. The reports can be output in PDFs and automatically sent out to email distributions. And the graphs show you a really nice description of your historical graphs, and you can change that to be, I want to see the last 5 runs, I want to see the last couple of weeks, or everything from the beginning, and divide it out by different projects that you've got out there. So it really has it's like an all-in-one from day one as far as test project goes, with all the features that they've got in there. And of course, Joe, it's free, right? One of the things that comes with that free account is that they actually give you some drive storage, so you can really get used to getting your feet wet in the tool, building your test cases, executing the test cases, getting your results, and then at some point it does, that drive space that they give you for free does fill up, and from that point there is a purchase tier, I guess, higher level, where you have to decide, is this really working for me? Am I doing great? Then cool, let's go up to the next level. And it is a paid product at that point, but they give you a ton more space, so you really get to play around with this for quite a while and to determine if it's good or usable for you or not.
So Paul, if someone has test project, how easy is it for them to get your add-on? It's just a matter of searching for? Is it called NLP or Magic Object Model?
All right. So currently, if you look at it, it's called the Addon of the Week. It's got a little flag on it. And it is published by the Dark Arts Wizard. That's me. And the name on it is the Natural Language Processing Engine. And in the description, we talk about how it converts plain English sentences, commands into executable code using the Magic Object Model. And there's even examples of how that works that you can play around with it. I have a sample up on my YouTube channel, so you can actually see it in action, kicking off. So
awesome. Paul, I also know, like I mentioned, you're active in the community. You go to a lot of conferences. Any insights you've gathered from any of the conferences you've been to recently that you'd like to share?
Yeah, actually, I got out to the Selenium conference in Chicago last year. I saw Simon Stewart out there. He's a great guy. He gave this great presentation about moving away from GUI automation, but not entirely, mind you, and getting into more API testing for a lot faster testing out there. Of course, at QAI Quest, we saw Moshe Millman out there. His Applitools tool is really cool. It's actually got a couple new features going on. It's that it does image validation, which is a difficult thing for automation to do, and they actually figured it out really, really well. One of the cool things that Applitools is now doing is that they will do validation. You could run tests concurrently on multiple different browsers, right? Maybe it's the same test, it's doing the same end-to-end, but you're making sure it runs under Chrome and Firefox and all that. And he does this validation. Now he's doing those validations and doing it concurrently all at the same time. So that's a really cool feature that I've learned from them, and I'm playing around with them a little bit more. And of course, he's also heading up that Selenium IDE project out there. Selenium IDE is back, and it is actually a great tool when used correctly. I know everybody always talks about, I don't like recording playback, but it's using the right tool in the right way. You can use a hammer to hammer in a nail. You could use a hammer to hammer in a screw, but a screwdriver works better. Using the right tool in the right way is always the best way to go.
That's appropriate for a Halloween episode because it's actually back from the dead, right? So
yes, it's back from the dead. But it's actually stronger and has more functionality there. I'm actually on the Slack channel and watching the features as people request them, and they get put in there, and makes it a much more powerful tool than it was years ago. So I definitely would say go take another look at that, the Selenium IDE. Oh, one of the new things that's going on with Applitools is that not only can it show the visual differences, that they actually can correlate between visual differences and the underlying DOM changes. So they can actually do a root cause analysis of what's going on with their tools. And they also now have visual locators, which basically allow you to find elements on your screen based on their AI image recognition and simulate clicks on the elements directly from Selenium or Appium. So that's some cool new stuff that's going on at the conferences and people that I'm talking to. I'm always trying to get a little bit more, keep my network open and keep up to speed with all the new tools and technology that we've got out there in the test automation field. And one last thing I'll say is I'm actually looking for a new client and employer at the moment. This is why this Test Talks podcast has got so much information packed into it, is that I've just been doing a whole lot of playing around with tools and stuff because I've got nothing to do and all day to do it. I just fill that time with a bunch of technology, learning about tools and stuff. So I guess that's about all I've got on that.
Okay, Paul, before we go, is there one piece of actual advice you can give someone to help save them from automation horror stories and horror automation efforts, and let us know the best way to find or contact you?
Yeah, the best piece of advice is don't be afraid to fail. Set aside some time every day to try and experiment with something. Don't just take an idea and kind of throw it off on the shelf because you think it may not work. Just give it a shot. Always look at creative ways to find solutions, and don't have an echo chamber in your head. Always listen to other people out there. One thing I always tell people is that they should really listen to the Test Guild, because Joe Colantonio interviews a bunch of brilliant people, plus me. And I'm just happy to be invited to the party to watch and listen to what people who are so much more brilliant than I am, and to get ideas off of them. You can find me up on social media. I'm up on Twitter. It's Dark Arts Wizard. And if you want to send me email to interact with me, it's thedarkartswizard@gmail.com. You can also search Paul Grossman up on YouTube and find all my video stuff up there. And of course, at Facebook, we've got the Advanced Test Automation group. People are always welcome to join up over there.
Thank you, Paul, for your automation awesomeness. For links to everything of value we covered in this episode, head on over to testguild.com/A like automation 276. And while you're there, make sure to click on that Try It for Free Today link under the exclusive sponsor section to learn all about Sauce Labs' awesome products and services. So that's it for this episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. I'm Joe, and my mission is to help you succeed with creating full stack automation awesomeness. As always, test everything and keep the good.
Here's to test automation. Cheers.
Cheers.
Shoot, the glass spilled. It's a shame I've ruined a nice suit.
Thanks for listening to the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Head on over to testguild.com for full show notes, amazing blog articles, and online testing conferences. Make sure to subscribe to join the guild and continue your testing journey. This has been a Joe Colantonio production.